The tale started surprisingly for me. My name is Zephyr. I am 25 years old, and I have recently returned home after an extensive time of living and working overseas. I went at the age of 22 to seek a job in a remote area, and throughout those 3 years, I kept touch with my family exclusively via irregular phone calls. However, this time I determined to come to my hometown to see my family after such an extended absence. Upon entering the familiar home, a sensation of both familiarity and strangeness overwhelmed me. My parents were tremendously emotional upon my homecoming, and our whole family spent the first evening reminiscing about beloved memories, full with laughter and the exquisite foods my mother cooked, which I had missed greatly. Yet, what startled me the most was Maris, my younger sister, the last time I met Maris. She was a tiny lovely but frightened child who liked to bury herself behind me in the company of strangers. However, when Maris stepped from the room to greet me, I could not believe my eyes. She had turned into a tall, self-assured woman with her long hair flowing freely, her eyes shimmered, and her smile was modest but appealing. It was a strange experience, comparable to discovering someone utterly new but still recognized. "Zephyr, it has been a lengthy time since I last saw you," Maris observed with a grin, her voice now tinged with an unexpected maturity. I grabbed her fiercely, asking, "When did you grow so much? I scarcely recognized you." To this Maris only giggled, her cheeks reddened, but she kept mute. Throughout the evening, I could not quit scrutinizing her every movement. Maris aroused old recollections, but I also noticed her substantial change. There was a mysterious element to her words and laughing that left me bewildered, a combination of familiarity and something elusive. As night struck, I returned to my room to recuperate after the hard travel. My mother had scrupulously kept my old room, every detail eliciting memories. Fatigued, I decided for a shower before bed. The warm water appeared to wash away the exhaustion of my travel, delivering a sensation of comfort and relaxation. Afterward, I wore a loose t-shirt. I relaxed on the outdated bed, expecting to slumber, nonetheless. Upon extinguishing the lights, the resulting darkness and solitude drove my thoughts to travel to recollections of my family, especially Maris, whose presence regularly dominated my mind. I found myself pondering on her metamorphosis and the soft but penetrating glance she had given towards me. I strove to disregard such views, persuading myself that it was merely an extraordinary experience to rejoin with my sister after many years of isolation. But the more I fought to forget, the more vivid her image grew in my mind. I remembered the manner in which Maris smiled when she was embarrassed and the way she bowed her head while I listened to her parents chat. Every motion and delicate expression seems to be seared in my mind. While laying on the bed, I noticed my fight with my emotions. Ultimately, I released them, maintaining just a pleasant feeling interwoven with a sense of humiliation and inner anguish. In the darkness, I became aware of the tremendous quiet around me, so profound that I could distinguish my own breathing. Yet my thoughts remained uneasy. I was unable to resist pondering Maris and the depth of her transition over the previous 3 years, which made me feel as if I was meeting an altogether new person. Recollections of our youth regularly reappeared. She would trot after me, shouting out, "Brother Zephyr, wait for me." I remembered the occasions when she sought cover behind me in fear and the situations when she exuberantly sprang with excitement upon getting tiny presents. However, Maris was no longer the young girl she once was. Her grin and the gleam in her eyes radiated a confidence and attraction that were foreign to me. I exhaled quietly, shutting my eyes in an effort to go into rest. But a soft rap on the door caused me to open my eyes. "Brother Zephyr, are you still awake?" Maris murmured, gently from outside the door. I sat up, a little surprised you were awake. "What's going on?" Still wearing the simple nightgown that accentuated her slim figure, Maris unlocked the door and stepped inside. "I can't sleep," she said with a sheepish look as she perched on the edge. She seemed to be thinking because her hands were shaking, her hands were clasped together, and she looked away from me. "Since we haven't seen each other in a long, I just want to talk for a little bit." I tried to keep my tone informal as I nodded. "It has, in fact, been a while." "How about it? Were you going to let me know that we've started?" First, we spoke about simple stories about our families, our jobs, and our lives. Maris spoke about her time at home with her parents, her studies, and the little joys she had experienced. But while we spoke, I noticed that sometimes her eyes seemed far away, as if she was thinking something that she couldn't express. She stopped suddenly, her fists clenching. Do you think that two people may undergo such profound changes as a result of extended separation that they may no longer understand each other as well as they previously did? Her question got me thinking. I stared into her eyes, trying to read her mind. I think so. However, if a connection endures, their relationship could return to how it was. I answered. Maris smiled slightly, but not with full delight. I have hope. In the dim light, we sat. The mood suddenly changed. I could feel her close, the warmth of her soft breath close. However, this closeness came with an unexplainable unease that I was unable to explain to Maris. I asked softly, trying to keep my voice controlled. She said nothing. She answered, "Nothing, dear," and shook her head slightly right away. Well, I guess I'm just thinking too much. Then she stood up and smiled at me again. I'm going back to my room and won't bother you anymore. Brother, good night. Good night, Maris, I murmured. But when she left and closed the door, my mind was still flooded with unanswered questions. I stood for a minute, staring into the darkness in front of me, as a strange but familiar feeling swept through my heart, indicating a change in our relationship that I was afraid to address. I lay back on the bed, but I couldn't fall asleep. My mind kept going back to Maris's face, her half-closed eyes, her quiet words as she left. Her eyes had a strange look, as if she wanted to say something but held back. Slowly, time passed, and the quiet made my heart ache even more. Finally, unable to stand the stuffy environment, I decided to go to the kitchen for a drink in the hopes of lifting my spirits. The faint light from the living room made me stop as I came down the stairs. Through the open door I looked. I saw Mara sitting on the couch with her legs crossed and her arms resting on a cushion, her eyes focused on the TV but her mind clearly elsewhere. To keep her from being startled, I walked in gently. "Are you still conscious?" I asked, causing Maris to recoil a little. Then, with a hint of shame on her face, she turned to me. "I couldn't sleep, so I came down here to spend some time watching TV." She took a seat next her, keeping a respectable distance. "What's bothering you?" "Ever since I arrived, you have been agitated." With her eyes fixed on her clenched fists, the other lady pursed her lips. She paused for a while, then shook her head. "It doesn't matter, sweetheart. It's strange. Since I had been away from home for so long, I didn't force her, but the atmosphere between us was still strangely tense." I looked at Maris, recognizing the adult features of her face but yet sensing something delicate about her, as if she had a secret she was not ready or able to reveal. I tried to defuse the situation by saying that I was just as lost when I got back. Her metamorphosis was so complete that I felt as if I was meeting a completely new person. Maris looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with surprise. "Does change have positive or negative effects?" she asked. "My brother." I smiled, trying not to seem too serious. "That is excellent. You've grown up a lot." Maris, who was quite gorgeous and mature, blushed at the praise and quickly looked away, but she was unable to hide the smile that momentarily lit up her lips. She said, "Thank you," in a voice so quiet I had to listen carefully. "Mr. Zephyr, I have an inquiry that may seem peculiar," Maris remarked, softly breaking the lengthy silence that had been broken only by the gentle hum of the television. At her request, I raised an eyebrow, promising to answer honestly. Maris chewed her lip as if thinking, then let out a long breath. It would be unfair for two people who were formerly close to one another to suddenly have a change in their sentiments. Her question cut through the feelings I had tried to repress ever since we were together. I did not know how to react, but I could feel her eyes, and I longed for an explanation. "I think our feelings are always right." "Maris?" I purposefully said, "I'm trying to keep my cool, but how you react to them is very important." "Do you understand what I mean?" Maris nodded slightly but said nothing to explain. Apparently lost in her own thoughts, she turned back to the TV screen and said nothing more. I didn't force her, but I couldn't deny that my heart was pounding, every pounding echoing in my chest. Part of me wanted to go and get away from this awkward situation, and part of me couldn't take my eyes off her. Finally, trying to keep my voice calm, I stood up. Is that okay? I think you'd better go to bed. We still have plenty of time to talk tomorrow, so don't stay up too late. Maris gave me a quick look and gave me a subtle nod. Good night, brother. I could feel the calm between Maris and me gradually giving way to an unsaid tension as I left the living room. As if to maintain the quiet of the home, I backed away to my room and gently closed the door. But this quiet just made my racing thoughts worse. Maris's question echoed in my head, circling indefinitely. Suppose that two people were formerly very close, but one of them now feels differently about the other. Is it a mistaken query? There was an implicit confession in her eyes that made me feel uneasy and nervous. I couldn't deny that ever since I'd seen Maris again, I'd been through a hurricane of feelings I didn't want to admit or think about. But her inquiry made those emotions unavoidable. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling with my eyes wide open, trying to shake off the jumbled thoughts. But I couldn't get Maris out of my head, her eyes, her grin, the way she sat next to me on the couch, looking confused but excited. I rolled about for a long time till the feeling got to be unbearable. I got up and went out onto the balcony to breathe in the air. The street lights threw shadows on the still night, and the starry sky provided some tranquility, but not enough to calm the roil within my heart. I heard a little noise coming from the stairway while I stood there. I spun around and saw Maris staring at me doubtfully. I couldn't sleep, she whispered. I thought you may also be there since I saw your door open as I got closer. I tried to have a casual attitude as I nodded. I went outdoors just to get some fresh air. Maris Mara, how are you? She was standing next to me, her hands softly gripping the railing, her eyes focused on the sky. It seems strange to have you back, but it's all right, she remarked. I am unable to understand a lot of feelings. There was something about her voice that made it hard to interrupt, so I listened in quiet, not knowing how to react. Zephyr Maris went on, her voice quiet yet tremulous. Have you ever had the impression that the most confusing people are also the ones closest to you? The inquiry cut right to the core of my being, and I turned to look into her eyes as if she were looking for something inside of me. Maris, I said, not knowing how to put it. Sometimes our feelings don't match what we want. What matters is how we react to them. Is my message clear to you? Maris nodded, staring at me, but there was a newness to the tension and intensity that I could not quite describe. She stood near, her soft breath blending with the air between us, reducing the already slender gap between us. Every beat of my heart echoed within my chest as it rushed. A part of me wanted to run away, and another part of me felt drawn to her. Maris, I spoke her name quietly, my voice stifled by passion, but before I could say another word, she moved forward, almost erasing the distance between us. I could feel her tenderness, warmth, and tenacity entwined, but then a shock lifted me out of my confusion. I took a step back, trying to hold on to what little reason I still had. We can't, can we, Maris? I said, my voice faltering, avoiding looking her in the eye. My sister is you. This is not suitable. She looked at me, her eyes full with unfathomable emotions, but she said nothing, only nodded a little before turning away and going back into the home without saying a word. I stood there watching her figure go. Uncertainty and confusion consumed my heart. I hid in my room and lay back on the bed. I couldn't sleep, but the stress kept me from forgetting how close Maris and I had been since my return home. Her timid grin when we first met, the importance of her questions, and her demeanor on the balcony all hinted at an unspoken suggestion. When the first rays of sunshine entered the doorway the next morning, I opened my eyes. My body was heavy following a restless night, but there was little time for reflection. A new day began with the smell of coffee being brewed in the kitchen, and as I down the stairs, I saw Maris standing at the essential oil machine, making coffee. Maris looked comfy and beautiful in jeans and a flowy t-shirt. She turned when she saw me and smiled sweetly, and I could feel the peace in her welcome at once. "Brother, good morning," she whispered, her eyes bright, her voice trying to seem casual. "I made coffee. Are you up for a cup?" "Yes. Thank you," I said, trying not to show my awe as I sat at the table and watched her carefully pour the coffee powder into the ring, her fingers making a motion I thought only I could see. We sat across from one another in a calm setting full with unspoken feelings. I could feel that she wanted to say something, and I also wanted to break the quiet. But every time I tried to talk, I was unable to come up with anything that made sense. The stillness was finally broken by Maris, who called me Mr. Zephyr. "If I made you feel uncomfortable last night, I'm sorry. I didn't want to cause any trouble at all." I stared at her silently, seeing the truth in her eyes as well as the sadness she was trying to hide. "It's okay." I couldn't think of anything to say either, Maris. It was all so unexpected. She put down the cup after nodding. In her presence, I sensed strength. Perhaps I am confused about who I am, too. I didn't know how to respond to her remarks, which exposed an admission I wasn't ready to face. But I understood that I couldn't avoid it forever. I couldn't let her feel alone because she was unique. "Listen, Maris." I got begun. I lowered my voice. "We're brothers. Change and time may make things strange, but as long as we respect one another, I have no doubt that this will pass. In the end, everything will be resolved. Maris." She looked lovingly at me. There seemed to be a message in her eyes. But she didn't say anything. She paused, then nodded slightly. "You're right. Maybe I'm thinking too much." Once breakfast was over, Maris stayed away from me all day. From cleaning to redecorating the living room, she handled most of the little domestic chores. I didn't go near her since I thought we both needed time to work out our feelings. But the tension was increased by this distance, which made me more agitated. The issue grew more complicated when my parents said they were going to spend the evening with a friend, leaving Maris and me alone in the home. To avoid any unpleasantness, I intended to withdraw to my room early. Then, however, I heard a soft knock on my door. I yelled, "Maris," and as I opened the door, I saw her standing there, her slim face calm, working on a project. "Would you please come out and speak with me for a bit?" Softly, almost imploringly, she asked. I wanted to say no, but my eyes told me otherwise. I nodded and left. We descended to the living room, which was filled with a gentle golden glow. I took a seat far away from Maris, who took a seat on the couch. "I only wanted to clarify. I don't want you to think I'm a stranger or that I'm trying to do something wrong," Maris stated in a shaking voice. "I just have no emotional self-control." At those words, my heart skipped a beat. I wanted to stop her, but I was at a loss for words. Zephyr. Maris kept rotating his head to face me. I realized that my feelings are misdirected, but I don't know how to stop them. Her remarks revealed a reality I had tried to hide while also piercing my heart like a dagger. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be well, but how could I do that when I wasn't sure myself? Thinking back on my feelings, I watched her as she opened her mouth to speak, but she got up and moved away, apologizing for her thoughts. She apologized and hurried out, leaving me again overwhelmed by mixed emotions. I didn't say anything in the living room, the soft golden light not being able to warm my heart. Maris's comments, the feelings she revealed, and my own powerlessness came together like a cork about to burst, and I began to blame myself. How could I have allowed things to go this bad? There was a part of me that wanted to leave the home to go away from everything, away from her eyes and my feelings. But another part held me back, keeping me from leaving. I didn't want to leave her in this state or let her experience rejection or loneliness. So I got up and walked carefully up the stairs, pausing before a door to a room. The door was only open, and the dull but cozy light from her room's table lamp spilled into the corridor. My voice was so low that only I could hear it when I knocked. "Can I enter, Maris?" No response was found. Maris was seated on the edge of the bed as I pulled the door open. With her hands folded in her lap, she bent her head. I could tell she knew I was there even though she didn't glance up at me. I murmured, "Maris," and shifted to the bed next her. "I'm here to let you know that you don't have to endure this pain alone, but I'm not sure what to say to cheer you up." Maris turned to face me, tears welling up in her eyes, but none of them dropped. "I know I'm mistaken, Zephyr, but I can't shake this sensation. I've made an effort, but I can't help but think about you whenever I see you." I took a long breath, trying to gather myself, knowing that no words could calm the chaos within her or me. Nevertheless, I felt driven to take action, to say anything to save us from sinking any further into our roiling emotions. "You are my sister, Maris," I said, my voice trembling, slowly but steadily. "These feelings might result from extended separation, which makes the situation strange. But it's important to remember who we are and how important we are to one another." Maris said nothing, her eyes filled with pain and a search for hope. "You're right, but I don't know how to let go of this emotion. Zephyr, I want to go back to when I was just your little sister and you were the great big brother I've always looked up to." In a soft but comforting motion, I put my hand on her shoulder. "I want it too. Time will help, Maris, and I think I'll be here when you get through it. Being close without going over the boundaries that we both know are uncrossable is helping you rediscover the brotherly affection we previously had." Maris nodded and rested her head softly on my shoulder, perhaps looking for some solace at that very time. We sat in that position for a while without exchanging words, just allowing the surrounding environment to merge into the stillness that we both needed to relax. Then I got up and smiled softly at her. "I'm going to bed because tomorrow is a fresh day, and I think everything will work out." Maris grinned, with a trace of relief mixed with a little melancholy smile. "Mr. Zephyr, good night." "Thank you." I walked out of her room, shut the door, and felt as if I had crossed a thin but necessary line. There was still internal conflict, but I knew that I had been right to stand by my moral principles in spite of the difficult feelings. I lay back in bed that night, feeling free. After struggling for days, I realized the trip ahead would be difficult. But for her and me, we had started the first steps toward recovery. This event taught me a valuable lesson. Although emotions are a natural part of being human, how we deal with and control them is crucial. We might sometimes find ourselves caught up in contradictory feelings, especially when unexpected events upend preconceived notions. However, it is important to take a moment, clearly evaluate the issue, and decide on the best course of action. I've discovered that love is more than just feelings. It represents a duty to oneself and others, and maintaining fundamental boundaries, even in the face of difficulties, is critical to fostering the connections and respect you cherish. You could sometimes have strong and nuanced emotions, which might cause you to become confused about who you are and how you relate to other people. In these situations, remember that while emotions are natural, decisions should be based on morality and intelligence. Instead of making snap decisions or acting on your emotions, give yourself time to understand them. Respect important limits in relationships since they are essential to maintaining trust and connection. Seek advice from dependable family members, friends, or associates if you are feeling lost. However, always put self-control first since it protects you from mistakes and maintains the priceless connections you value. My story ends with lessons that will last a lifetime and a feeling of comfort that everything has been handled correctly. Life goes on, and I have faith that we will preserve this holy family tie stuff with honesty and dignity. We appreciate your interest in our story. Remember to use the like button to encourage yourself in the following video if you think it's interesting and important. I hope everyone stays well and happy.